In the year 1917, during one of the darkest periods of World War I, specifically at the Battle of the Somme, a group of soldiers faced an unrelenting enemy, the German troops. Among the combatants was a French captain who suffered 3 severe gunshot wounds to the abdomen. In the urgency of the situation, a military doctor attempted to save his life by performing surgery without anesthesia, a common practice under the harsh conditions of war. During the operation, the doctor managed to remove 2 bullets, but the third presented an unusual problem. It had fragmented inside the captain's body. As the doctor attempted to extract the fragments, he made a startling and unsettling discovery. The bullet was made of silver, something extremely rare on the battlefield. The surprise and mystery surrounding this discovery were fleeting, as moments after removing the fragment, the captain died on the operating table. Perplexed, the doctor wondered how a silver bullet could have been fired in the midst of a conventional battle, and more importantly, where the bullet might have come from, as it was not a typical weapon of the German forces. The film takes a leap back in time, going 35 years before the war. The setting now is a small rural village in France, where a man of great local influence, Baron Seamus Laurent, lives with his wife Isabel and their 2 children, Charlotte and Edward. Seamus is a figure of authority, feared and respected by all the villagers. His austere and severe demeanor reflects a man without scruples, willing to protect his interests at any cost. At a certain point, Seamus faces a problem with a group of Romani gypsies who had recently arrived in the region. The group claims part of the Baron's land, arguing that it rightfully belongs to them. Seamus, however, refuses to yield. Following the advice of the village elders, he decides to take drastic measures to rid himself of the gypsies once and for all. The tension mounts when Seamus plans the massacre of the Romani clan. The leader of the gypsy clan, a wise and mystical woman, senses that danger is approaching. The night before the attack, she orders one of her men to melt silver and mold a denture in the shape of wolf fangs, which would serve as protection against what was to come. The following day, the massacre takes place. Seamus's men brutally attack the gypsy camp, killing many of the members and setting fire to their tents. However, the leader and her trusted man meet an even more terrible fate. The man is brutally tortured, with his hands and feet cut off before being tied to a cross, like a scarecrow, a macabre warning to any other group that might dare to challenge the Baron's authority. The Romani leader, on the other hand, is buried alive. Before being completely buried, she casts a curse on Seamus and all those who participated in the massacre, saying that they would be haunted by nightmares until they invoked the Dark One, a supernatural entity that would bring destruction to those who awakened it. The leader's final act was to place the silver fangs on her chest, sealing the curse with a dark touch of magic. After the massacre, the village appears to return to normal routine, but soon the effects of the curse begin to manifest. Seamus's daughter, Charlotte, is the first to suffer. She begins having disturbing dreams in which she sees the scarecrow made from the gypsy man's body and the silver fangs buried beneath it. A few days later, her brother Edward also begins having the same nightmares, but in his dreams, the gypsy leader appears more vividly, provoking visceral terror in the boy. As time goes on, these nightmares spread among the villagers. A feeling of fear begins to dominate the community as more people report seeing the scarecrow and the silver fangs in their dreams. The situation reaches a critical point when Charlotte and Edward, along with their friend Tim, decide to investigate whether the scarecrow from their dreams truly exists. Tim, feeling curious and bold, takes the children to the place where he believes the scarecrow is buried. When they find it, he challenges Charlotte and Edward to dig up the treasure, the silver fangs. After a brief argument, Tim decides to dig and finds the box containing the fangs. When he puts them on, he is instantly possessed by an evil force. Under the control of this entity, Tim attacks Edward, biting him on the neck. The other children flee in panic. In despair, Charlotte runs home and informs her parents about the attack. Edward survives but is gravely wounded. The village doctor diagnoses the injury as an attack by a wild animal, But Charlotte knows the truth. From that moment on, she begins keeping secrets, fearing what Seamus might do to Tim and his family if he knew the truth. That night, while the house is steeped in silence, Charlotte has a nightmare more terrifying than any before. She goes to Edward's room and sees something horrifying. Her brother's body is entangled in a substance that looks like roots emerging from his skin. Terrified, she screams, waking her parents. When everyone rushes to see what's happening, they discover that Edward has disappeared. From this point, the plot intensifies further. Seamus leads a relentless search for his son, without success. At the same time, a mysterious pathologist named John McBride arrives in the village. He is on his own mission, investigating a series of supernatural events related to the gypsies and the curse. John quickly realizes that the events in the village are directly connected to the Silver Fangs and the entity invoked by the curse. As John's investigation progresses, he discovers that anyone bitten by someone possessed by the Fangs or who wears them will eventually transform into a monstrous creature, similar to a werewolf. With this, it becomes clear that Edward, now missing, has been transformed into one of these creatures. The village falls into panic as more people begin to disappear or are found dead under horrible circumstances. Seamus, once skeptical, finally accepts that a supernatural force is at play and joins John to confront the threat. Together, they organize a hunt for the creature with the goal of destroying the source of the evil, the Silver Fangs. The hunt culminates in an intense confrontation in the forest, where the group finally finds Edward, now fully transformed into a wild beast. Seamus is overwhelmed with sorrow upon seeing what has become of his son. However, John convinces him that the only way to free Edward from the curse is to kill him with a silver bullet. Seamus hesitates, but when the creature attacks Charlotte, he makes the decision to shoot. The fatal shot frees Edward from the curse, and he briefly returns to his human form before dying. The evil, however, has not been completely eradicated. John explains that the Silver Fangs must be destroyed to ensure that the curse does not return to haunt the village. The film ends with John leaving the village, continuing his journey. Seamus and Charlotte try to rebuild their lives, but the weight of the supernatural events and the loss of Edward continue to haunt them. The curse may have been broken, but the scars remain, and the fear that the evil could return never fully disappears.